Hello, friend, and welcome back to another episode of Artworks for Teachers. I'm your host, Susan Riley, and today I'm joined by Jesus Huerta, who is a 11-year educator veteran and who has also turned into an ed tech coach. And today we're going to be talking about STEAM and makerspaces and how you can embed technology into your curriculum, no matter what grade level or what area you teach. Jesus is passionate about integrating technology so that it's more than just about the tool. It's actually about how students are learning and engaging with those tools, as well as how teachers can build their own skills with the tools that are coming out. I think you're going to love this episode for a variety of reasons. One of which is Jesus shares some of his go-to items for tech that are emerging right now at each grade level. And he also gives some really practical ideas for how to bring technology into your classroom, no matter whether you're a Luddite who is still working on those Tandy 3000s from the 1980s, woo woo, or if you have all of the latest tech gadgets and love everything about technology. Jesus is gonna put you at ease and help you bring your passion, no matter what level it is of technology, into the classroom to make it more relevant and engaging for students. So without further ado, here's Jesus. Hi there, Jesus. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So let's start by just telling us a little bit about yourself and your journey into education so far.
So my name is Jesus Huerta. I'm an educational technology coach in Calexico, California. If you've never heard of it, that's not a surprise. You've probably heard of our neighbors to the east. Wait, no, west. San Diego.
Mm-hmm.
We're an hour and a half east of San Diego, out in the desert. So Calexico is a border town.
Mm-hmm.
So I was born in San Jose, up near San Francisco, but I've lived here since I was like 6 months old. And it's funny, I've been teaching for 11 years, but it took me a while to get back into education. I had studied that at first and then joined the workforce, then had a family, and I was like, okay, I need something better. And so then I ended up being a teacher. And uh, just my second year teaching, they sent me to a mini Q conference here in our area. And I met an educator that just got me to think about teaching differently. And that's why I teach how I teach, because of him. His name is Ascension Reyes. Awesome guy.
I
So,
love that. I love that. That's how we find our passion, right? Is through other teachers who have that same passion and kind of share the spark with each of us. So I know that in your role as an ed tech coach, and you work with a lot of integration of technology. Um, Talk to me a little bit about that. How did you find that aspect, that's what you wanted to really focus in on, and what does that look like for you?
so I've always been fascinated with tech, even as a little kid. We grew up pretty poor. So my first exposure to a computer was a Commodore 64. I'm showing my age with naming that. Probably people in their 20s are like, "What's that?" They're looking it up and they're laughing right now.
Yeah, they are.
And not to make people
I'm
cry, but I
here
mean,
for it
we're
because I remember the Tandy 3000. That was my
okay.
yeah.
See, you're talking my talk right there,
Yeah.
but I had wanted a Nintendo and we couldn't afford it, so my mom came home with that. And she saw what uses cartridges. It's something,
Yeah.
and so I've always been interested in tech. And so when I started teaching, I mean, I was very like, okay, by the book, teach the first year, and I wasn't that happy. And then, like I said, I met this guy, and he was showing robotics, Firos, physical computing, programming with, he had Arduinos,
Mm.
and then he had 3D printing, and I'm like, I'm really interested in this stuff. Let me look at it. And I told him during the 3D print one, it was already the second session. I go, hey, I go, so I'm negative. I go, hey, this is for like high school, right? Like a CTE course. He's like, what do you teach? I go, fifth grade. Why not? That
Mhm.
little phrase, I always was like, why not? Why not? So everything I do now is, why not? And so when a teacher's like, hey, I want to do this, okay, why not? So I have a second grade teacher here that he does 3D design with Tinkercad with second graders.
That's great.
And
Yeah.
I have a first grade teacher that's waiting for me to be able to make time because I'm the only tech coach right now in my district. And we're K-12.
Mm.
So there are 7 elementaries two junior highs, a ninth grade campus because we're so big, and then our high school, and then our continuation, which also has a community school inside.
Wow.
So, so yeah, and so in my role, I'm always like, okay, how can I get them to use this tool, even when it's not necessarily seen as an educational technology tool or an ed tech tool? I'm always like, okay, why not? And so because he said why not to me, I'm like, it could be done. I always say, yeah, we could do it. And so I always push myself to try.
Yeah. So from that moment when he said, why not? And you just kind of rolled with it, how did that come about in your classroom? So did you just start using technology in your classroom at that point? And how did you go from that to becoming a tech coach?
So right away, I was like, okay, I had just started using Twitter back then. So this is, let me see, my 11th year. So we're talking like 2014,
Mhm.
around there. And so I got on Donors Choose, got my first 3D printer. I thought it was like a $3,000 machine back then. I was like, oh, it's gonna take forever. I was
Mhm.
already thinking, how can I campaign here in my area? And Kia Motors came in and just boom, one shot paid for it.
Wow.
I almost threw it in the trash because it took me 6 months just to figure out. This is how smart us teachers are sometimes. I'm saying that sarcastically because instead of calling that guy that I saw present 3D printing, I'll just figure it out on my own. And so he said, "Why didn't you call me?" I'm like, I don't know, just I didn't think about it. Just you know.
Yeah.
And so I just kept using more and more tech. Donors Choose. I'd go to like eBay, yard sales. If I saw something, I'm like, oh, they have connects. Hey,
Yeah.
how much do you want for this? Or one time I was in Riverside and I would go through Craigslist, which is sketchy as it is. And I made like a deal at the parking lot with this guy. He had gone to a closing Toys R Us and he bought all these Spheros.
Mm.
He goes, I thought people would want them. He goes, and I can't get rid of them. He goes, so you're a teacher? I go, yeah, and I was only gonna buy a couple. He heard my story about why I wanted them, so he goes, give me like 150 bucks. I'll give you all 40 of these. I'm like, okay, why not? So I was always doing that, and then I this is my third district here. The other two districts I was at, I think I wasn't a good fit because of how I taught. It's different. It's mainly project-based learning.
Mhm.
Um, and so here, after a couple of years, they opened us. Well, there was two coaches here before. My partner left to a job at the county, and so it's just me right now. But when it opened up, I applied, and so I ended up being a coach. And I'm very happy in this role right now because the seven elementaries we have, I helped pick out and kind of organize the makerspaces. So each site has a makerspace right now.
Mhm.
The hard part is how do we train seven elementary schools worth of teachers to use all that stuff?
Mhm.
And so I tell them, don't walk in and get overwhelmed because as a teacher, we're gonna say, oh, I have to know all this. No, pick the one that as soon as you walk in, you're like, that's it right there. I want to use the Cricut, or I want to use a laser cutter, or I heard we had drones. I've always wondered what that is. So I tell them, look, focus on that. This is a multi-year thing. Don't think you have to learn it right away. Get that out of your head because as teachers, that's the first thing we think. And so, yeah, that's how I ended up in this position. And this is my second year here. And so I love it because I still connect with students. I go do basically like demo lessons.
Mhm.
I do trainings with teachers. And so I go to sites and I'm walking down the hall and I hear them, hey, Mr. Huerta, hey, are you coming to my class? No, I'm sorry. And then they get all disappointed. And so, yeah.
Well, and I love how like the story is so resourceful, right? Like we're MacGyvers as educators. It goes back to why didn't you ask? Because we're so used to, putting everything
Yeah.
together with duct tape and glue and and you're so resourceful at getting things. And I think that's one of the first things that I hear teachers and administrators say when it comes to creating makerspaces is we don't have the funding, we don't have the money. And your story is proof that you don't need to. You can find other avenues. I mean, you got to have a little money, but you can find
Yeah.
other avenues, and just be a little resourceful in order to fill those things. I'm curious in your role now. What are some of the other barriers that you see for people who are nervous about using makerspaces or taking that leap?
I think our biggest barrier right now, and I'm going to say not just here, I think in general, after COVID,
Mm.
um, I think the hope, and maybe even the expectation that, people are gonna jump into, I forget our code. Hey, remember they used to do our code? Yeah, why didn't we do this all the time? And I have two 3D printers in my classroom, and instead that didn't happen. And I mean, look, I don't want to sound rude, but um, I remember talking to somebody before COVID, and they're like, "Oh, I'm techie," and I'm like, "Oh, okay." And I look, I understand. I know that I'm a tech coach, and my job is to know all this tech. But when they said, "Oh, it's because I use Google Classroom," and I kind of stopped in my tracks, and I'm like, "Look, I don't want to be mean, but that's like baseline. Like, that's not. I wouldn't even brag. That's like going, I know how to cook. What? Look at this bowl of cereal right here. Like, oh, okay, I'm impressed. I guess. I mean, it's not to sound rude, and so I think being able to use like Google Classroom, okay, every teacher should know that now coming into the profession.
Yeah.
Because if not, you're in the dark ages, like for sure. Because I mean, sorry, and it's not even because I'm being lazy. It's just you're more effective.
Mm,
And I think sometimes teachers see tools and go, oh, I'm not going to use that. You're not being lazy. You're working smarter.
right.
And the way I try to motivate teachers to jump in, trying either like a project or use this as an activity or a tool. And that's where I think that the hesitation is. And I think that's the problem. That we have teachers that are like, I don't know how to get started. I think what part of it is what I said earlier, that they're afraid to jump in and they don't have time.
Yeah.
And so my job is, how can I find the tool that, you know what, it makes this thing like, okay, how can we 3D print this without, all right, get ready to split the atom, guys, because it's so hard to learn. It is. It's really hard to balance the build plate. The printers we use, and it's gonna sound like I'm selling them. I always feel like it when I talk about them, but the equipment that we have is teacher friendly. The
Mm,
bamboo line of printers that we use, um, really the heart is, what did you design? I made this case for my AirPods.
mhm,
Okay, send it to the printer. Oh, give me a warning. Oh, I forgot to add supports, or it says that it's there's something wrong with the model. Okay, really, it's you send it and it just goes.
mhm.
There's this much like learning curve now. It went from being way up here to down here.
Yeah.
And I think it's really important for teachers to jump in now,
Mm,
even though there's still a learning curve, because the big complaint is kids are bored or they misbehave. Well, guess what? The misbehavior comes from they're bored or they're confused.
right.
So they're like, you know what? I'm not just gonna sit here confused. I'm gonna try to get out of it by hopefully they can send me to the office, and I'm just gonna at least sit there and daydream.
Yeah.
Or again, they're bored, and we're talking even high level students, because if they're not challenged, they're like, okay, I'm gonna act out, and it's like, well, I never expected that person to act out. Well, yeah, they've been bored for like a month now.
Right.
So what I tell teachers is, look, you can get chicken breast, chicken thigh, boil it up, and hey, you're getting the protein you're eating. Or I can take it, let me throw a little seasoning here, like, let me use ChatGPT to, how can I make this lesson better? I'm teaching angles.
Mhm,
What do I have access to? This. Okay, you know what? Let me add a dash of this or that. Let me add, spherules, because guess what? On a piece of paper, a student's not going to really make that connection to angles, because they're like, so something that goes on a piece of paper like this, no, oh, that's an angle, the rotation of something.
yeah.
Oh, I've heard, okay. They start to use those terms naturally.
Mm,
And so I think the biggest thing is teachers don't know what they don't know. So they don't realize that these tools are a lot easier now. There's a lot of there's a lot of options now.
mm,
Um, if they're in kinder, we got indies, for example, robots.
yeah.
If we were talking high school, we have mbots where they build them.
Mm,
So I think that's part of it. And also, they need to be patient with themselves and understand it's not going to be a month-long thing that, all right, you mastered it. It's going to take you a couple of years. And that's
yeah.
okay. The kids
Yeah.
are happy with you falling on your face because they're like, hey, at least you're trying something different.
Well, it's true. And I think there's so much to unpack in what you've just shared, because I think, one, the idea that it's okay for us to fail and fail forward and fail in front of the kids because we're all learning together. Two, the technology makes it relevant. And if we're being really honest about why kids are bored, why they're showing apathy, why they're not showing up to school, it's because they're not finding that what we're teaching is relevant to what they want to do moving forward. I mean, if they want to be an influencer on YouTube tomorrow, well, then learning algebra for them is not relevant, right? We have to learn
Yeah.
how to make it relevant in order for them to be, excited about their future. And I think technology is a clear way to do that. And what you've modeled is that it's not just about the tools, that yes, we do need to know Google Classroom at a bare minimum, but also knowing what tools exist and how to use them. And I think that is such a key, particularly when we're talking about STEAM and what we're trying to do with connecting creativity, innovation with these STEM tools. One of my frustrations has always been, especially when we're talking about STEM and STEAM, is that schools will go out and buy all these tools and then give them to teachers and say, here, use them, but provide no PD in terms of how it connects to your curriculum. So can you talk to me a little bit about how you do that with teachers? How do you show them not only how to use the tool, but how to implement this into their curriculum so it's not one more thing they have to do, but it's a natural part of how they teach?
And so real quick, right now you mentioned, vendors.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like sometimes, and just not, I'm trying not to get on the, my soapbox, but I feel like sometimes we will go to vendors because it's like, okay, I need to check this box. I need this stuff.
Yes.
But I'm sorry, most vendors that I've seen till maybe a couple months ago, and the bamboo printers have been out for 2 years. Most of them were only selling the Dremels, and I'm sorry, Dremels a super inferior 3D printer.
Mm.
And so I would say, just a quick little plug. I'm not saying reach out to me. Reach out to teachers that you're like, I heard this person is techie. Okay, go pick their brain and listen to them, because
Yeah.
guess what? You got 10 grand. You're gonna get 5 3D printers from a vendor that they recommend that are okay printers, or actually, you're just gonna frustrate your teachers. But with 10 grand, guess what? I can help 30 teachers.
Mm.
They can all have a 3D printer in their classroom, because the
Wow.
ones that I recommend are about $350, and
Wow.
they run circles around those $2,000 ones. So just a
Amazing.
quick plug. So I think your question was, how do I get teachers to use that tool to teach?
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's where my trick is this. I tell teachers, look, we got to trick kids into learning, because if you go and say, oh, look, a 3D printer, now learn algebra with it. Oh, they're gonna roll their eyes and go, this is nope. Mm-mm. But
Right.
if we tell them, hey, look at this cool thing. Look, oh, hey, you made a keychain. Hey, you know what? Let's make another keychain, but it's going to be for somebody you respect. And I want you to think about that person. Now I'm going to give you the option of, okay, either you can write about the person first or start designing it. But when I hit my timer at 7 minutes, you're going to switch the job that you're doing. And so, but here's some prompts, and some sentence starters for my ELs that support for them. You need me to do this, right? Yeah, yeah, yeah. I got it. Okay. Oh, yeah. It's for my cousin that, he's in the military, or he started his own business, at 18, and now he has, 2 restaurants or whatever it is. But they're like, let me get to the keychain part. And so one way is I tell teachers, look, them learning the tool, let them learn it first. Because once they have it in August, you have that in your tool belt the rest of the year. You're like, hey, you know what? This person didn't show up, my guest speaker. Hey, quick, let me do a robotics quick activity with them off the top of my head, because I've been using it. Now I can use it and think off the top of my head very quickly with it. And so I tell them, look, the hard is not for the kids, it is the tool. Oh, I get to use a drone.
Mm-hmm.
But for us, it's let's add this component to it. And I told them, if you don't learn it also a little bit, you're not going to see it as the teaching tool that you could see it with your teacher vision. Again, Mr. Reyes said that, you go, oh, teachers have teacher vision. We see stuff no other, that nobody else sees it the same way.
Yeah.
And I think the day of, you know what, just put that in front of the kids. They'll learn it. They're not going to be able to run an X1 3D printer
Mm-hmm.
or build an MBOT without a little bit of support. So we do have to learn it. And that's why I tell teachers, but you don't need to learn all this at the same time.
Yeah.
So I always tell teachers, if you're like, man, they don't write enough, show them a tech tool and just have them reflect on it.
Yeah.
That's it. Guess what? In my area, we have a lot of migrant families, so they follow the fruits and the vegetables. They travel, they're traveling, they move a lot.
Yeah.
But the times that, because okay, so if I had open house, I would have the kids share their tech stuff. They make 3 games a year. They do cardboard arcade, they make a board game, and they make a video game.
Mm-hmm.
I would have parents come in filthy, and that's okay because that's what my dad did. He worked in the fields.
Yeah.
And they would see the tech and go, please continue because there's money. I don't want them out there with me
Right.
in the cold, in the rain, in the heat.
Yeah.
And so I tell teachers, it'll get your parents more involved.
Mm.
It's just better all around. And again, I tell them, what are you into?
Right.
I have a coach that he loves Ozobots, loves it. He's so good with them now. They asked him to do a webinar. I mean, I'm gonna support him, and he keeps saying, "No, because no, I didn't do nothing. I just said, hey, here's a little robot for you." And he's like, "I need to move on to 3D printing because he has one." I'm like, "No." He's like, "Why?" Well, because it's like he had spaghetti, noodles, and he just keeps making more and more amazing dishes. I'm like, "Why are you gonna move on when you're opening this in a way that I've never seen?" And they're like, "Wait a minute, what are you doing with this?" And he has the data to back up what he's doing.
Yeah.
I go, "You're doing something with it. Don't stop. It's you're at the roulette table, and you're not losing, man. Like you just keep going with it."
Just keep going.
And he's my example for other teachers. If you're like Legos, I keep coming up with these great Lego. Okay, so who told you to move on? Just keep going for it. Yeah. Now, when you're like, I'm kind of bored with Legos. Okay, now move on to something else because the kids are going to see you're bored too.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. No, and I think that's an important point is that start with where you're comfortable, start small and build from there. I do have a question about makerspaces. And we get this question all the time in terms of what should we put in them and how should we build them out? My question to you is not necessarily how you should build them out, but should you have a dedicated makerspace or should you work to having tech tools in each classroom that can then be used in various lessons at any time? Or both? What do you think?
so I'm gonna just let everybody steal my idea if I was a principal.
Okay.
I would use either my tech background
Mhm.
or I would say, who's techie here? All right. Or in the district. All right, great. What tool should I have in kinder, first, second, so it scales up? So when they go to 7th and 8th grade, they're like, I don't know what elective to pick because I loved working with, hand tools. Should I take, the wood shop in junior high or should I wait till high school?
Mhm.
I'm in high school now, and K to 6, I saw these cool, things. Oh, I used a Glowforge or an X2, I think is better. But you know what? Plasma cutter. The software is the same. Oh, it's just like a super laser cutter. Okay, that's what I would do. I think the makerspace as a destination should still exist,
Okay.
but I think every classroom in itself should be a makerspace. Mine, I'm going to share something that I did that I'm very proud of. And it's not to, I'm going to use little kid slang, not to flex on everybody, but I'm very proud of it. Now, could I fall on my face? I did. It's on video. So I'll see if I can find it somewhere. So 2019, fall 2019, I'm here in Calexico and I'm doing a lot of stuff with tech. I have a couple 3D printers in my classroom. And my principal and the director of school enrichment, they're like, hey, let's do a STEAM club.
Mhm.
And I go, okay. And I go, I have an idea though. And they're like, okay. And the director of STEAM would say, well, how much is this going to cost? So I'm like, well, this much or whatever. Okay. And so I said, look, let's invite kids from other classes because my kids are going to see this stuff all the time. So
Mhm.
my class was all mad at me because they're like, how come we can't join after school? I'm like, well, you see it all day, so it's all right. Don't worry. So then I'm like, you know what? It'd be cool if we had more 3D printers. I said, look, we have this brand called Creality. They have the kit printers that you build.
Mhm.
I said, I go, what if I told you we could be 1-to-1 with 3D printers for less than $10,000?
Mm.
Let's do it. So we bought 33 3D printers. I'm like, great. When I get here, my kids are going to build it. We bought racks. COVID happens. So
Mm.
they stay home. And I'm like, great. So I meet up with the director over the summer, and I had lent her some equipment, she had lent me some, and we're just chit chatting, and she's like, "So I'm so disappointed. Those printers are at home. I mean, at the warehouse. This is gonna sit there for 2 years," which was correct. And so I said, "Look, let's let's do something. I go, I have an idea for you. She was like, how much? And I said, you already paid for it. I said, let's have the kids, because my students in fifth,
Mhm.
I followed them into sixth grade. That was already the plan,
Okay.
which was a great plan because COVID happened. So I told her, look, let's have them pick them up and I'll teach them how to build it via Zoom at home.
Mm.
And she's like, have you ever done it? And I said, no. But I'm like, I'm sure I can do it. I was, the first day, I was like, what was I thinking? Oh my God. These kids are like, what's an L wrench? I'm like, that tool right there. They're like, the seven? I'm like, put it upside down, turn it. Oh, an L. I'm like, okay. What's a flathead screwdriver? I'm like, these kids have never held tools. I'm like, this is great. It's funny and a little frustrating at the same time. And so that right there would, my class was going to be like a super makerspace in itself, but I always treated my class as it has to be a makerspace,
Mm.
because not because there wasn't one at the same, I would still have all that stuff anyways.
Mhm.
But I think as long as there's tools that allow teachers to be creative in how they teach, it doesn't have to be a 3D printer. It
Mhm.
does not have to be, a laser cutter.
Yeah.
You could have, a so there's laser sintering 3D printing. It looks like dust, and a laser hits it, and you excavate it kind of like a fall. It's amazing. It's like $100,000 machine. Who cares if you have it if you don't know how to use it or how to teach with it?
That's right. That's right. So,
So yeah, that's so for me. It's having those tools and a variety of tools
yeah.
if you can for those teachers, just like you would have for students. You're gonna have some that need something easy to start with, and then you need some like me that would be like, all right, where's the thing that shoots a laser into space and this comes out, and I got to see that thing.
Yeah.
So
So I'm going to pick your brain a little bit on that a little bit. Just what are some of the tools, and this is where you can plug whatever you want. What are some of the tools that you think that most schools should have at various levels? So elementary, middle, high. What would be tools that would be teacher friendly, that would engage students, and that might be newer on the market that people don't necessarily know about, because everybody knows about Legos at this point, right? So
yeah.
what are some other tools that we should consider?
So if you told me, hey, I need a shopping list for say an elementary makerspace, I would say get an electric cardboard cutter. Like there's one called Works, WORX, because cardboard arcade is or cardboard is the easiest tool,
Yes.
our easiest material to work with. And kids ripping it, it doesn't look professional. But as the teacher, you can cut it. And I would say have teachers use the tool because it does have a blade, and there's a guard, but it's really just so you don't slip your hand in there. But I mean, somebody could stick a string in there. I would say that tool is a must-have, which is like a $20 tool. But that and a bunch of cardboard, and you have a makerspace already.
Mm.
3D printing, I would say get the bamboo line of 3D printers, just because the one that costs 1,500 is like having three of other printers. It's so
Mm.
fast. Doing a keychain on like a Ender 3 hour and a half does it in 30 minutes, 20 minutes
Mm.
sometimes. An X tool laser cutter. It doesn't have to be top of the line, but these are the brands that I've seen that are easiest to use.
Yeah.
Anything that's like a hand resource they can build, like Legos, okay, get Connects, get
Mm.
Magnetiles, get Kiva planks. They look like Jenga blocks.
Yep.
Tinker Toys, the old school, like the bucket. I used to play with that all the time. Lincoln Logs, anything like that. If you can get drones, get drones.
Mhm.
If you can get like where they build the drone,
Mhm.
even better. And that could be, say, for sixth grade. But I would say, like, for robotics, get the indies, get Ozobots for the little ones.
Mhm.
For the older kids, get them Spheros. And if you can find Ollies, the super fast Sphero brand, the one that looks like a little log,
Yep.
um, anything like that. But also get art resources.
Mm.
I know people say STEM, but I'm a big believer in STEAM. And I have a friend, Valerie Perez. She puts an extra M, so I'm going to plug her and borrow her acronym.
Yeah.
It's science, technology, engineering, art, math, and music.
Mm.
Digital music. You can get. I think it's Aki is the brand. They have digital keyboards. My son has one.
Yeah.
He does game design, and he wants to just make the whole game on his own. He's just started his college classes online. That's a great little $80 keyboard, and it's a MIDI keyboard, so you can connect it to a device and do digital music.
Mhm.
Digital music tools, there's tons that are free. One's called Beepbox,
Hmm.
BEEP. Um, and they just touch little squares or click on them,
Yep.
and they learn the four layers of a song,
Hmm.
which I didn't really think of it as a sandwich like that. And they have little layers, and each layer there's only certain instruments available, so you create the sound like a wall. And I was like, man, this is a great tool for kids to see the structure of a song.
Yeah.
So I think anything like that, but I think my best advice, because you have your admin at the
Hmm.
top. Yes, I know it's going to be frustrating if you have a teacher tell you buy from these 10 vendors, instead of just one. But guess what? Right now, I know I'm going to say something that is terrible to hear, but I know every state throughout, they're having cuts.
Yeah.
That COVID money ended. And so we have to stretch our money. And the best person to help you is going to be a teacher also for that.
Hmm.
Especially when if they've bought stuff for their classroom and they're like, man, they stretch those dollars, or they get, I know some districts and some states, they'll say, hey, here's your $500 you get every year to buy whatever you want for your classroom.
Yeah.
They've done that in the past. Go ask those teachers. Guess
Hmm.
what? That's a smart thing to do. You don't have to know everything. I still learn a lot, even though I have to be the tech guy. Sometimes I see somebody and they're like, you didn't know that? I'm like, no, I didn't know that. I mean, thank you. I'm gonna steal it and act like I did, but no.
Absolutely. Well, and it goes back to we're all learning together, right? And that's the whole
Yeah.
point. Now, before we go, I have heard through the grapevine that you have passions for wood burning, carving, and music. So tell me a little bit about how these artistic endeavors, and I love that you talked about moving into STEAM, because I think that's non-negotiable at this point, headed into the 21st century, especially with AI.
Yeah.
Talk to me about how your artistic passions have influenced your tech passion.
So I've always loved like doodling and drawing. And it's funny, I used to just do little circles or little doodles on the side of my paper. And in third grade, I had a teacher tell me that it was okay. And that's something that like changed how I learned also.
Yeah.
Because I would always get in trouble because they thought I wasn't paying attention.
Mm.
And so, I mean, my son has ADHD. When he got diagnosed as an adult, I got diagnosed. And
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, so that's why I would do some of the things that I do, which I don't know if you notice on camera, I move my hands a lot.
Yeah.
It's killing me when I don't do this thing right here. Um, and so she said a math problem out loud. She was like, Jesus, what's, like 8 times 9? Well, 72. And I wasn't even looking. I was just like, but then I realized, oh, I didn't look up. I didn't. This is what we teach students sometimes. In my head, I still remember, I didn't look up to look at her. I'm going to get in trouble.
Mm.
Instead of just saying, hey, well, he knew what he was doing and he was doing something else. It doesn't matter. I got the answer I needed.
Yeah.
I think sometimes we make it like it's got to be that. And so, anyways, um, she came to me later. She was, "Why do you do that? The little circles on the side." I go, and I didn't know what to say. I was super scared. She goes, "It helps you think, huh?" It was like somebody spoke my language for the first time. She put her hand on my shoulder. She goes, "Never stop doing that." She goes, "Find other ways." So she goes, "Because she goes, you learn better if you're not looking at me." And she was right. I didn't need to look at her. I felt like I just needed to listen and do something else with my hands and my eyes. And so from there, I just kept drawing in class, but listening. Um, I wasn't the best student in high school. I was once I went off to college the second time.
Mhm.
But I always wanted to keep drawing, and I think right now with AI, when I need to make presentations, yes, I love doing that. But I still draw. I do. One of my new ones is 3D modeling with Nomad on the iPad.
Mhm.
I'll AI generate an image, and then I use that to turn it into a 3D model. But for me, I've always felt like to keep your mind sharp, you have to learn new things. And if you're drawing or creating something, it's always something new. And so you have to think, well, how do I make it look like this? So you're doing instant problem solving. And I think that's something that's been lost. And we were like, well, how come kids don't know how to think critically? Because we ask them to draw and then they do, a little happy face like that.
Right.
Okay, well, but if we took the time to teach them to draw or give them a chance to explore it, then we get something better. And I think that's where it's not that much better, but at least it's a little bit
Yeah.
better,
Yeah.
um and so when it came to tech, I was like, how can I do stuff like this? Because if I can combine, art is always going to be, yeah, oh, that's a cool drawing, or it's not my style, whatever. But there's always an emotion to it.
Mm.
And for the creator, there's even more. And if we can attach something to it for like the student,
Mhm.
they're going to go, oh, because most people, when they make art, it's because they want to send a message about how they're feeling about something, they themselves, loss, joy, happiness. People have written songs about when they fell in love and when they've had their heart broken.
Yeah.
And so for me, when it's time to create something, okay, make a little keychain, and then the kids figure out how to put a heart on it. Well, guess what? It has to be for somebody, and you got to think about who they are and all that. And so I've always loved making things. I always wanted to be a game designer myself, and that's why I have a little bit of a background in game design. I did a couple of years just studying like theory and how to do that. And that's something that I also brought to the classroom. And I love apps like Bloxels because the kids have to draw the character, the background, animate it. Oh, I love animation, love it.
Mm.
Because I think when a child or anybody makes something and you can show it and get feedback right then and there, most people are going to go, whoa, you made a game? You made this animation? You made this thing that was 3D printed?
Mhm.
Guess what? That kid that struggles with being in class, sitting still, doesn't speak well, whether it's they have a speech impediment, English not their first language, they're new to the country, but you can see somebody's reaction when they go, "What? You made that?" Like they're gonna go, "Oh, hey, I'm worth something," because they're gonna think they're not, even though they are.
Yeah.
And so I think my passion for that bled over into the classroom because just showing them basic art lessons, the kids were like, I mean, for my ego, it helped. They're like, oh, that's so cool. I'm like, great, I'm a good artist now. But I wanted them to be even better because I wanted them to see if you love this, this is a job.
Yeah.
This is a career. And I always told students, if you find something where you're like, I am ready to do that every day, you found your passion and getting paid is just a bonus.
Amen to that. Amen to that. Absolutely. So thank you so much for spending your time with us today. I would love to know, how can our audience get in contact with you if they want to connect further?
So they can contact me via email. It's let's teach 1979 at Gmail. There, you know how old I am again. Um, I post a lot more now on Instagram.
Great.
It's Mr. Huerta's class.
Mhm.
It's the same for TikTok. I don't post as much on TikTok anymore. Mainly just Instagram, like videos of what I'm doing in my class. I hardly ever post about myself. Um, and I'm just on LinkedIn also. If you look up Jesus Huerta, you'll see my face right there.
Awesome. Yeah.
And really, yeah, that's it.
Great. We'll link to all of that in the show notes to make sure that it's easy
Awesome.
for people to find you. Thank you so much again today. I learned so much from you. I'm so sure that
Thank you.
everybody in our listening audience will as well. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.